A couple years ago, I showed you how to cut one of the most interesting and I think one of the strongest ways to join three pieces of wood together. I call it the triple castle joint or the Triforce joint. Let me know in the comments below if you understand that reference. And while I have no idea who invented it, I love the complexity of it. When people see this at a table or a chair or a bench or some other piece of furniture, they always ask how it was done. The fact is, this joint is not that difficult to cut despite its complexity. You don't even need any special tools. In fact, I'm about to show you how you can make this with an inexpensive handsaw, a chisel, and just 4 straight cuts, not difficult cuts, per piece. But this time, I also want to really focus on a few lessons in hand sawing that will help you do very fine work no matter what you're building. So this video isn't just about making this joint. It's also about becoming a better woodworker in general, especially as it concerns cutting with a handsaw. Since this is just a demo, I'm using some relatively small pieces of wood, but this can be done to any scale, including huge beams, as long as you follow 2 rules. First, all 3 parts have to be the same size, not including their length, of course. And the width of each piece must be 1.5 times its thickness. Doesn't matter how big or how small. Just use a ratio of 1 to 1.5, because that ratio is critical for the joint to work. I've already marked all my cut lines and colored in the waste areas I'll be removing, but it's not as complicated as it looks. In fact, that 1 to 1.5 ratio makes the layout really simple. You don't even have to measure most of it. I'm going to show you how to use the workpieces themselves to mark your lines without measuring. With one workpiece laying on its edge, all the front and back faces of your parts are marked as shown here. With the workpiece turned to lay flat, a second line is marked on the front faces and on both edges. With the workpiece still laying flat, all of the fronts are marked first while laying on one edge, then flipped end for end to mark the other edge. This essentially divides the face into 2/3. And the same process is repeated on both the front and the back faces of all the workpieces. A similar process is used to mark the end grain of all your workpieces, once again dividing it into thirds. Now I'm using a combination square to draw right down the center of the end grain in the orientation you see here, turning those 3 sections into 6. Finally, I use the same square setting to bisect both edges of all the workpieces. Once again, you can see I've colored in the waste areas that are going to be removed, and it does look complicated, but it's really not. Just rewatch the last few seconds and copy what I did, and you'll be fine no matter how big or small your pieces are. If you do insist on a dimensional drawing to wrap your head around, here's one based upon workpieces that are 1.5 inch thick by 2.25 wide, that same 1 to 1.5 ratio. Of course, if your workpieces are larger or smaller, you'll have to recalculate all these measurements, and that could introduce error. So it's always best to just use the workpieces themselves as a gauge instead of measurements. This is a critical lesson for all woodworking projects. Marking from the pieces as much as possible, rather than measuring, transferring measurements, and marking, is going to save you a lot of frustration in this craft, no matter what you're making. Another excellent tip that will help you in any number of projects is to create a shoulder to guide your handsaw. This is done by using a knife or a marking gauge to cut over your lines, then following up with a chisel on the waste side of those lines. The chisel removes a little wedge of material and leaves behind a groove that your saw can drop inside and a shoulder to guide it. Since the saw will naturally want to follow the path of least resistance, these shoulders will make it much easier to create nice straight cuts. You'll see what I mean as I make my first cut. As I said, despite all these lines, there are only 4 cuts to be made, and they're all straight. The first one is cut right down the center of the end grain. I angled the workpiece so that I can see the line on the edge facing me and the one across the end of the board. I drop the blade into that chiseled groove where it naturally fits against the shoulder, right on my line. As I cut, I'm working back and forth, taking light strokes while following that line down the edge, then the line across the end. Once I've deepened the groove a bit, I can speed up a little more, letting the kerf guide the saw, again, down the edge and back across the end. Once I've connected my 2 opposite corners at this angle, I can reverse the workpiece in the vise and repeat the same process starting at the other corner. There's no rush. Take your time. Don't grip your handle too hard. Just relax and let the kerf guide the saw as you advance it deeper and deeper. This is how you make really accurate cuts. Finally, I set the workpiece straight in the vise and I cut downward, removing the little triangle of waste that remains inside. This finishing cut practically steers itself. Just don't go past your baselines. When the first cut is finished, I turn the workpiece 180 degrees in the vise and I repeat the exact same process for the other 2 lines that I scribed on the edge and end grain. This is a Japanese Ryoba saw, which is perfect for this type of joinery because it's very precise and it has rip teeth along one edge. And there's no spine, so it doesn't impede the cut if you go very deeply into the wood. It's not an expensive saw at all, and I think every shop should have one. I'll put a link below to the one I use if you want to check it out. One more cut, this time on the face of the workpiece. You'll notice I'm using a different saw now. I could have done this with the Ryoba, but I switched for 2 reasons. First, this is a cross cut, and the rip-filed teeth on the Ryoba aren't ideal for cutting across the grain. Of course, Ryoba saws also have cross-cut teeth on the opposite side of the blade, which is why they're so versatile and why you could use that saw for all this. However, the Dozuki saw features a thinner blade that I find even more precise. However, that thin blade requires a spine, which limits the depth of the cut, and the teeth aren't ground for ripping through end grain, so it's really just for cross cuts. I personally prefer to have both types of saws, and since they aren't expensive, you may prefer both as well. But again, you could get away with just using the Ryoba. Either way, Japanese saws are game changers when it comes to making precise cuts by hand. Try one at the link below and let me know if you agree. I didn't count this next step as one of my 4 cuts in this joint because it's not absolutely necessary. I'm just doing it to get rid of the bulk of the waste in the middle before I use my chisel. It's a convenience, really. You could just chop it all out with the chisel alone. As I do use the chisel, you can see how those shoulders I previously established continued to pay off, this time providing a positive stop to put my chisel's blade as I chop right on my line. Now, if I hadn't cut away most of the waste before this, I'd have to chop this out in sections, working my way back to that groove in my line. Otherwise, all that excess waste would have forced my chisel bevel backwards and potentially across my line as I tried to chop down. Repeat this process on all 4 workpieces and do a dry fit. If everything looks good, you can slather it with some glue and it's time to assemble. They go together a bit like a puzzle. One stands upright, facing me as you see here. The second is turned face up and inserted from the left, and the third is turned 90 degrees and inserted from the back. Here's a drawing that may help you wrap your head around it. As the glue swelled the wood, I did have to do a little more pounding with a mallet than I would have liked. I was lucky I didn't split everything. But once it was dried and sanded a bit, it looked pretty nice. We're not done yet though. That little empty spot in the corner has to be filled with a block of wood. I suppose you could leave it empty if you wanted to, but I think it looks much better filled. Once that's done, you have a nice square joint, and I think it looks pretty cool just like that. But there's another modification that I think will make it look even better. I'm going to saw off the sharp corner along those lines, which connect the corners of the various segments. This compound angle cut is a little tricky, but if you take your time and you follow your lines, it's not difficult. Removing the corner adds more facets to an already complex look, and I like it this way a lot better. I think this joint would be great for tables, chairs, benches, bed frames, you name it. And it's one of the strongest corner joints I have ever assembled. If you'd like to see more joinery videos, please let me know in the comments below. Now check this out. I've been a proud Tormek user for years. I've never seen so many clever innovations from just one small company, and the quality is simply uncompromising. Even if you're not in the market for a new sharpening system, you should check them out and see what they have to offer at the link below this video. There's a reason they're regarded as the best of the best.